I want you to watch this 7-foot tall Amazonian robot mommy step on me for being a bad boy. Alright, now that I got you filthy degenerate gamers' attention, let's talk about Atomic Heart, shall we? So I spent the entire day yesterday, as of writing this, playing Atomic Heart. I woke up at 5 AM, started playing, only stopping for bathroom breaks and food, and played all the way until 3 AM when I beat the game. And I have thoughts on it. Many thoughts that I want to share with y'all. Some good, some bad. But let me just say first, this game is more than just the 7-foot tall robot MILFs. Behind all the memes and jokes and controversy, there is an actual decent game here. And I emphasize the use of the word decent. It's not good, nor bad, or great, or even terrible. It's just decent, which is exactly how I was expecting to feel, considering that this was the developer Mundfish's first ever game, and they were shooting for the stars. But did they quite reach said stars? Well, no, not really. The game is fun, but at the same time, it's really frustrating. But the amount of fun I was having was enough to counteract the level of frustration it was bringing me, just enough for me to justify finishing it. So let's talk, shall we? Let's discuss what I think works really well for this game and what doesn't. This will be a mostly spoiler-free video, but I will make sure to mention ahead of time if I am going to be spoiling any major events, which, spoiler alert for this video, I will be. And since people will almost always want to hear the bad more than the good, let's just start with that, eh? So the game's start is incredibly slow, to its detriment I think, as most people leaving bad reviews will cite the very slow start, and they're not wrong in doing so. You really don't get into the meat and action of the game until around 40 minutes in, and even then, it's a lot more of a glimpse of what you'll be seeing and doing throughout the game than it is reflective of the overall experience. You'll basically be walking around the flying city being shown all the cool tech products and stuff, which is nice. I think it works in theory. You have this world that you've just crafted, let's, show it off to the player, but you can accomplish that in a better way than having the player just walk through the most dreadfully boring 40-minute intro sequence. And speaking of dreadfully boring walking sequences, holy shit, this game has some points where the pacing slows to a crawl, and I feel like I'm dissolving from old age. For example, there's a scene early on in the game where you need to shock these batteries to quickly fill up a canister with some goop so you can proceed further in the level. But to do so, you need to ride on this god-awful trolley system that just moves so damn slow. And it's not like there's a ton of enemies coming at you during it to distract from the slow crawl. I mean, yeah, there are enemies, sure, but not enough to completely take your attention away. Once you deal with the enemies, you're just left wondering, why is this so slow? Until the next batch of like 4 floaty boys spawn for you to quickly murder again. Then there are spots where you are physically slowed down to an extremely low movement speed and just have to walk around. I.e. when you have to find the robot's friend's arms and she keeps stopping in the hallway to insult the robot mannequins, which is cute and funny for the first time, but after she keeps doing it for every single robot here, it starts getting really annoying.
Oh, I envy you humans. You can just pick up a razor and shave that horrible monstrous mustache off. But this one, you're not even a machine, you nitwit.
And speaking of annoying, puzzles. So many damn puzzles. Constantly. Now, I don't mind puzzles in my game, not at all, but holy hell, I hate having to do the exact same stupid lock puzzle every other room I want to enter. It's just so damn annoying, and the devs try to make it something cute and funny by having the main character spurt out voice lines like, "Oh man, another lock, who would have guessed?"
Wow. A lock. Didn't see that coming.
And not just the puzzles, they will have those voice lines for the fetch quests as well, which, oh my god, I hope you like running around large facilities looking for 4 to 5 very specific items, because you'll be doing it a lot and the player character will be commenting about how much he hates it the entire time.
The berserking robots took my partner, Claire, apart.
Did they scatter her all over the complex or something?
Precisely. How did you know, dear comrade?
Call it a hunch.
It's not cute, it's not some meta joke, it's self-aware ignorance and obnoxious on the part of the developers. The open world also seems kinda pointless. Like, I spent some time running around and exploring and doing some of the testing grounds to get different weapon parts, but there is really no reason at all to do any of those testing grounds. You'll never find yourself underpowered or anything like that, and it's not really like they add any amount of actual relevant story details. I mean, sure, you'll get to know a bit more about the kinds of testing going on at the facility, but that's pretty much it. Eventually, I just started skipping over the testing grounds and little side areas to explore entirely because I came to the conclusion there wasn't really anything worthwhile for me to be found there, and I wasn't trying to deal with having to deactivate the cameras and enemies in each specific zone just so I wasn't getting jumped by an army of robots every 50 feet. If it's your cup of tea to get everything though, then I guess go for it. It honestly won't run you that much more playtime to explore it all. And bugs. The game has a few, not really game breaking, but I did have to relaunch the application a few times. Mostly though, they were just comedically timed ones. For example, and spoilers here for the story, so skip ahead if you want to avoid them, but towards the end of the game, when you start learning about your past and how your memories were wiped after an accident in the field of battle, a super serious moment in the game, my character was stuck with a tape record in his hand and it wouldn't go away. Even after I got back into the gameplay, it was still there and I had to relaunch the game to get rid of it. And then, even earlier than that, just exploring the world and stuff, I kept getting this weird like glowing textures on surfaces, almost like it was a holographic Pokemon card, which also wouldn't go away until after I reloaded the game. There was a ton of small stuff like that, nothing exactly game breaking, but enough to be bothersome. And I know a lot of people hate the dialogue and writing, and I can see why. The main character is kind of a dick, like constantly.
We're all going to die! Okay with me. You first.
And honestly, he's just really annoying. Like, I swear to God, if I ever hear the catchphrase crispy critters again in my life, I will murder whoever was the one that dared utter those forsaken words. And P3's voice actor just really doesn't sell it at some points. Spoilers again here, but when you finally catch up to Petrov and he's explaining to you that you're being used and lied to and stuff, P3 just... He doesn't sell the idea of worry and stress.
Ready! Put everything into motion. Stop! This was supposed to be
I said stop!
A special day for us. I was going to propose to her the day Collector was launched. It was going to happen right here in the theater. House of Bug.
Watch out, your hands!
Give this to Larissa.
And that doesn't just go for P3, it goes for other characters as well. It's just a problem that is universal across a lot of characters in this game, where they sound just a bit off at almost all times. I don't think the actual scripting is horrible, it's just the work done by the voice actors kinda does it a disservice.
My leg is stuck. Shoot it already!
There's too many of them. Hurry!
I'm trying!
If they get to us,
Have you
we're
thought about
dead.
aiming better?
They're almost here. Get up! Get up!
I'm trying! Fuck!
No! Help me! Get it off me!
Hang on, buddy. I'm coming.
And finally, this last one is a bit more subjective, but then again, reviews of games will always be subjective to the one reviewing it. My last little annoyance is the combat. I do not like it. It feels way too clunky. The guns shoot just fine, and actually I'd argue they feel really good. They have a nice amount of weight and reality to them that makes shooting them feel pretty damn good. But then you get to the actual meat and potatoes of combat. Granted, there aren't a whole lot of meat and potatoes to get into, but there are still some there, that's to be sure. You've got your Bioshock-like abilities, which there aren't really that many to choose between, and the ones you do get are actually a little bit underwhelming. Like, so much so, I kinda just forgot to use them for most of my playthrough. The only one I really chose to utilize was the shield. And that's not to say that the abilities on offer are bad, they're just a little underwhelming overall. But outside of those underwhelming abilities, Enemies are just okay at the best of times and superbly annoying at the worst of times. They will bum rush you in pairs, which can often lead to you getting knocked over in a loop, because that's just something that enemies can do, which, like, unironically, the worst mechanic in a game in recent history, let me tell you, and they just feel like bullet sponges, even if they really aren't. And I started to lose my mind towards the end of the game with the amount of rooms that just had endless amounts of enemies. Like, so many of them. There was one time where I actually just had a fucking meltdown while playing because every time I tried to go open this door that I needed to progress through, enemies would spawn. I would then kill them, go back to the room, scan around for enemies. It would show no enemies in certain spots, so I'd go to open this door again, I'd turn around, and sure enough, there was like 5 robots that had just poofed into existence at those locations I had just scanned. It was so annoying. Let me open the fucking door! Oh my god, dude! I'm gonna lose my fucking mind if another wave of fucking robots spawns when I try to go open that goddamn door! This isn't fucking COD Zombies, bro! And don't even get me started on the clunky and slow melee combat. Overall, it's just, I don't like the combat much. It is my least favorite aspect of the entire game, which really isn't great when you consider it's one of the core elements and selling points. I mean, it's not the worst combat in a video game that I've ever played, but it's just serviceable. It's nothing past that really, and it's definitely not pushing any boundaries. Also, I lied. I have one last thing to complain about, and spoilers once again, but the endings are just so bad, both of them. There were 2 endings, one good and one bad, but the good ending is just entirely anticlimactic and kinda pointless. You choose one of 2 dialogue choices, and if you choose the one that leads to the good ending, you get a cutscene of you ripping out the little tendrils from your glove, and that's it. That's the end of the game. Then there's the bad ending, which is seemingly the one that the developers want you to do, seeing as the story is pushing you towards it. You infiltrate the tower, murder your wife, who is now a sexy giant ballerina robot, shoot the guy who is like an adoptive father to you, and then watch as you realize your glove friend Charles has actually been manipulating you this whole time, and he turns into a giant goop monster. And that's that. End of the line. Neither ending is actually, quote, good, and both of them actually kinda just suck. That's enough complaining though, let's talk about some positives now. So earlier I complained about the puzzles, but let me be absolutely clear, the puzzles I hate are specifically the ones that lock the doors. There are some extremely cool and fun puzzles in this game that serve as a great break from the otherwise sluggish combat. Things like the positive and negative puzzle/platforming segments, and the turntables in which you have to spin around rooms to allow for safe passage. Those types of puzzles are extremely fun, and they are used sparingly enough, they are always welcome when you finally get around to them. The graphics are pretty good. I'm aware that they may not look the best in my video, but that's because I had to play the game on medium graphics most of the time, otherwise my computer wouldn't be able to record the footage without it looking like the choppiest, laggiest game in the world. But graphically, even on medium, it's still a really good looking game, and hats off to the team for making a game this good looking that actually runs on release. The soundtrack is also phenomenal. I place a very high value on music in games and think people always tend to undersell the importance of game OSTs, but they can make or break the toning in certain scenarios, and the soundtrack in this game is on point. From the iconic classical and operatic themes, to the remixes of those same themes, to to the wonderful rock and metal themes provided by everyone's favorite composer, Mick Gordon. The tracks are just, they are on point, that's for sure. Probably one of my favorite game OSTs of recent memory. Your glove companion Charles is probably the only character in the game that isn't cripplingly annoying to listen to, mostly by the virtue of the fact that the things he has to say usually pertain to explaining the world and what's going on in the story, which is nice. Especially coming off the back of another game that attempted the same exact concept and didn't exactly, let's say it didn't exactly live up to its own hype. Another thing I really enjoy is the non-open world segments. People were kinda touting it as Bioshock-like, but I'd honestly argue it's a lot more Prey 2017 than it is Bioshock, in the sense of how it feels to play, and the underground complexes are the best example of that. They just ooze the same exact vibes that Prey 2017 did in all the right ways. I mean, hell, just look at this monster and tell me it doesn't just immediately remind you of something ripped straight out of Prey. You'll also be upgrading your weapons and your glove abilities quite often, which means a lot of looting, which means you're going to be spending a lot of time dumpster diving. And thankfully, the devs had the foresight to make it so that the glove just sucks everything up with the hold of one button, which, oh my god, is so nice coming from open world games where you have to manually search a body or a desk or a chest or something and pick up all of the items on them. And lastly, the bosses and enemy variety is really nice. There's a ton of different robots for you to kill, and even some organic creatures in there to tenderize as well, from your basic standard mustached robot boys and flying repair bots to the more exotic and destructive ball of death straight out of The Incredibles. Alright, so it's time for my final thoughts, and honestly, the game was fun. I enjoyed it. Despite having a much longer negative section than a positive section, it was mostly because a lot of the game was just kinda average. And when everything's about what you expect, the bad things just stick out a lot more. And a lot of those negatives aren't like game-ruining problems, rather they're just minor annoyances and frustrations that at times can add up to allow for a little bit of tedium. Atomic Heart is the perfect mix of fun enough that I wanted to continue playing and finish the game, but just frustrating enough that I was glad I played it on the Game Pass and didn't pay $60 for it. If you like Prey or Bioshock or Dishonored, then you'll probably like this game as well. I'd recommend waiting for a sale or playing it on the Game Pass, but I can't imagine that you'd hate your time spent on it. And honestly, for their first game, Muntfish did a pretty damn good job, especially considering the hype behind it, and the staggering amount of games released in recent years with similar levels of expectations failing to live up to them. For me, it is a solid 7 or 7.5 out of 10. Very fun for the time you spend in it, but also just a bit frustrating at times, but never teetering into the too frustrating to justify range. Anyways, that's the review, that's the video. Lightning Returns video is almost done, finished scripting and recording the voiceover for it, so expect that sometime within the next couple of weeks, and you might as well go ahead and subscribe if you've watched until now. I mean, come on, obviously we got something going on here. Anyways, good night.